Slate piece dropped, and Ben Clements and friend of the show, Susan Greenhalgh, collaborated on this. The headline, One Trump Georgia Scheme Goes Much Deeper. Where are the feds? And this goes to the heart of the Coffee County voter data breach. Susan joins us from freespeechforpeople.org. Susan, how have you been?
I'm good. Hi, Ron. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, and thanks for putting this back on folks' radars. And I know with Trump coming in and getting his mugshot and arraignment and bond set and all that stuff, that this sort of ties in. And I guess we should credit Fani Willis for finding a way to sort of bring this into her charges. But it's a valid question. Where's the state investigation? Where's the federal investigation? And that's kind of what your story goes into with Ben, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's even more than she sort of fitted in. I think it does provide a very foundational a set of facts and potential crimes that help underpin this overall conspiracy that's outlined in her racketeering indictment. But what's important that we raise in it is that the information that uncovered this potential crime in Coffee County of taking voting system software improperly, not just data. We're not talking about data. We're talking about the actual software that runs the voting machines, that was uncovered by the Coalition for Good Governance in the course of a long-going litigation that they have in Georgia that started in 2017, not through the county uncovering it, not through the Georgia Secretary of State's office uncovering it, not through the Georgia Bureau of Investigation uncovering it. And it gets even worse in that we know that there were several significant incidents which should have triggered, by any reasonable estimation, an investigation from the Secretary of State's office at the least. And they did not. And that's what we write about in this article, and we give a lot of details in the documentation about that.
We talked, believe back in June, about the debate over whether to stick with Dominion voting and the tablet ballots, the screens and all that stuff, versus going with hand counting or paper ballots. And this kind of goes to the heart of that, too, this dissonance within the Secretary of State's office. They think everything's fine. They've got this all under control. And yet they're not investigating what appears to have been a major breach of security for, as you mentioned, not just the data, but the actual software that they are relying on giving us accurate results.
Yeah, that's right. And I just want to be clear that in the Coalition for Good Governance lawsuit, for which I am a consulting expert, they are seeking to get rid of the touch screens that record votes on a piece of paper. They're not seeking to have votes hand counted. The logic there is that to have an accurate count, you need a reliable record of voter intent that each voter records, and that should be recorded on paper. And the best way to do that, the most secure way to do that, the most reliable way to do that is for the voter to mark that piece of paper with a pen themselves. But that what we've seen in Georgia is one of the few states where people mark their ballots using an electronic machine and a touch screen. And what the curling suit is seeking to do is to just get rid of the touch screens and allow the ballots to be counted by tabulators, but then also to require that they be very robustly audited so that you know that the tabulators are counting correctly. Yes, this does raise a question as to why the Secretary of State didn't investigate when all these red flags came up that we write about. But it's even worse because we've seen that the Secretary of State's office very sort of glibly dismissed this. And when he was asked point blank about when he started an investigation by a local reporter in Atlanta, he wasn't able to give a straight answer. He changed his answer a couple times. So that doesn't look fantastic for him.
But to go beyond Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, this is also raising questions at the Department of, or should be raising questions at the Department of Justice, because this isn't just a Georgia issue, as you point out in your piece.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And we've been at Free Speech for People, we've been making that point since last December when we first wrote to the Department of Justice that uh, this conspiracy, as DA Willis shows in her indictment, spans outside of Georgia. It includes people in Michigan and in other states and people in D.C. And this and a conspiracy to get voting system software from Michigan that was all part of the same contract for the people that came in and did it in Georgia. And that really necessitates a federal investigation. And while DA Willis has done such an impressive job putting together all of this information, she is a county district attorney. It is not her responsibility. Yeah. We can't expect her to have the resources to be conducting that type of sprawling multi-state investigation. That is the responsibility of the Department of Justice and the special counsel, and we still have no indication at all that they're investigating.
And there's all sorts of questions about what sort of collaboration is going on between Fani Willis and Jack Smith, and that raises that question. Is there maybe some sort of, hey, listen, if you'll bring that up, if it's like, the volleyball match, you make the volley and I'll slam it over the net. Is there any sort of thought that might be why this is working out the way it did?
I don't think so, because from what we've seen so far, that what DA Willis has presented seems to rely on the evidence that has come from the curling case. Mm-hmm. And while we know that she took a lot of testimony in the grand jury, it doesn't look like like the evidence gathering went beyond what had already come out from curling, as far as we can tell. So it's really not, so it wouldn't make sense for the federal government to say, well, we're going to rely on your investigative gathering, when we didn't really see so much of that happening in this case. And unfortunately, as I think I mentioned this last time, we've put in public records requests over and over and over again, periodically, to Coffee County for any communication that they may have received from the feds, from the DOJ or FBI or special counsel. And there's no communication coming into the county from the feds asking for interviews, asking for them to preserve documents, potentially subpoenaing any information, nothing like that. Which is why we feel confident they're not investigating. We're
with Susan Greenhalgh from freespeechforpeople.org. She and Ben Clement writes from Slate yesterday. One Trump Georgia scheme goes much deeper. Where are the feds? Talking at great length about the Coffee County voter data and software breach. Is there any thought that, somewhere out there in the netherworlds that maybe the federal government's just holding back because they're kind of tired of hearing the cries of hyper-partisanship and witch hunt and politically motivated, yada, yada, yada?
I guess that's possible. I'll tell you my best estimate as to why we haven't seen an investigation yet. Right. And it's just sort of circumstances, because this Coffee County breach was uncovered by the plaintiffs, as we mentioned in curling, not by the state investigation. And it took them a really long time to get anyone to listen to them, to get the court to grant discovery. Once they got discovery, it was less than 2 months before they had all the documents which showed that this went all the way up to Sidney Powell. And that happened in the late summer of last year. And what we saw in the January 6th committee is that a lot of the key people who would have been read into the scheme were deposed for the January 6th committee in spring and even early spring of 2022. So before any of this came out. So understandably, no one from the January 6th committee asked these key players about the breach in Coffee County, because why would they? They didn't know it had happened yet. Mm-hmm. And when the information really was fully developed, it was in late September of 2022, when a lot of everyone in Congress was gone campaigning, and the January 6th committee was wrapping up, because they knew they only had a couple months before they were going to produce their report, and they lost the House. So it didn't make it into the January 6th committee report. I don't blame the committee for that, or their their crack investigators. I think it's a matter of timing that sometimes, everything in life can be timing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And if Jack Smith is looking at that report to guide his investigation, he's going to overlook the Coffee County breach because it's not in there, and not for any nefarious reasons.
There you go.
That's one possible reason. There could be others. I kind of feel like that's what I lean on as the most likely.
And I love how you include the anecdote in your piece, which, by the way, we're sharing in today's show notes at ronshowatl.com, how this breach was discovered. It was not discovered because anybody was looking for it. It was something completely different. And they were like, wait, what is happening there? They were looking for something else completely in video, as you guys pointed out. And I just find that funny. Can you want to share the anecdote real quick?
What
Misty Hampton was looking. It was like padding her hours or something like that, and lo and behold,
but the problem was they didn't actually find it from that. That's what is so disturbing about it, and raises so many questions about why this breach had to be uncovered by the curling litigants, because Misty Hampton supposedly was fired for falsifying her timesheets. Misty Hampton is the election supervisor in Coffee County that permitted all of these unauthorized people, including Doug Logan from the Cyber Ninjas, to come in and mess around with the voting machines unfettered. And so the county said they were going to fire her. We wonder if they had suspicions that this had gone on, and that's why they were forcing her resignation. That could be a possibility. But they said they were going to do it because she's falsifying her timesheets. They went through the surveillance video footage to know when she came and when she left, because maybe some days she said, I came in at 8, she really came in at 11.
Right.
And when they did that, they failed to notice the fact that all of these people were coming and going in the election office improperly. And that I find like a huge red flag. Why did they not notice this back in February of 2021, shortly after the breach occurred? Why did they not seem to think there was anything amiss? And it wasn't until the summer of 2022 that the curling litigants found the documentation. And then it was actually the county refused to hand over the video for a long time, claiming that they didn't have it. And the curling litigants continued to fight and fight and fight for it. And they got it in September of 2022. And that's when we see, the whole show happening.
It's like the Nixon tapes, except they didn't erase the key parts.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, great work. Again, you and Ben Clemens working on the article. We've got that in today's show notes at ronshowatl.com. And I love how you stay on this story, because there's been so much that happens. It's easy for it to fall by the wayside or not be on everybody's radar, but it's still an important story with voter integrity, voter security, and not just that, but like the American people wanting to believe the results of elections aren't being tampered with. And as we get into the 23rd century and artificial intelligence, we need to be able to trust voting. That is the center of our governance, our democracy, the sustainability of our republic. And this is an important story, and I'm glad you guys are staying on it.
Thank you so much. We're going to stay on it.
Thank you very much. Susan Greenhalgh with freespeechforpeople.org. Thanks for coming on The Ron Show.
Thank you.
Okay, first, it was Jason L.